A black man is unjustly humiliated at work when they discover that he is the disguised owner of the company. They are shocked. It was a cold Monday morning when Andrew, a man with an imposing presence and a sharp mind, looked at himself in his office mirror. He was about to do something no other CEO he knew had ever done. With a resigned smile, he put on a simple wig and thick-rimmed glasses. The final piece of the disguise was a nasal prosthesis that made him look years older. Andrew took a deep breath and left his office, leaving behind the luxury of his glass-walled room. Upon arriving at the reception of Technofart, where he was usually treated with deference and respect, he felt invisible. The receptionist, who always greeted him with a smile, didn't even look up. "Good morning. I'm Mark Andrewson, the new administrative assistant," he said, handing over his falsified documents. The receptionist, without lifting her eyes, just pointed to a chair in the corner. Andrew sat down, reflecting on how a simple disguise changed everything. The first day was a melange of anonymity and trivial tasks. Mark was led to a small room in the basement, where he found an old desk and an outdated computer. The manager in charge of him, Mr. Donald, was a middle-aged man with a perpetually irritated expression. "You're the new guy?" "Well, this needs to be filed by the end of the day," said Donald, throwing a pile of papers on Mark's desk. Andrew began to get closer to Marion and Edwin, trying to gain their trust. He offered to help with extra tasks and spent long hours at the office, waiting for an opportunity to learn more about their suspicious activities. His perseverance soon paid off. One night, while organizing some files, Edwin approached him with an unusual proposal. "Hey Mark, you seem like a guy who can keep secrets," Edwin began with a conspiratorial smile. "We have a little side project. Nothing major, but it can be quite lucrative. Interested?" Mark, suppressing his excitement, promptly accepted. Edwin took him to a conference room where Marion and two other employees were already gathered. On the computer screen, there were diagrams and codes that Mark immediately recognized. It was a prototype of software Technofart had been working on for months, something highly confidential. Marion, unaware of his true identity, explained, "We've gained access to the main server. We are selling this technology to a competing company. They pay us well, and no one suspects a thing because we're always one step ahead." Mark feigned interest while internally seething with anger. He couldn't believe how deep the betrayal had gone. He spent the following days gathering evidence. He copied emails, recorded conversations, and discreetly accessed the involved employees' computers to collect more information. As his investigation progressed, Mark noticed Marion seemed more cautious. She began to look around suspiciously, as if sensing something was wrong. In a tense moment, she confronted Mark. "You're acting strange, Mark. Walking around, asking questions. You're not going to betray us, are you?" Mark, maintaining his calm, replied, "Of course not. I'm just trying to understand how everything works." Despite the growing tension, Mark managed to convince Marion of his loyalty. However, he knew time was running out. He needed to act before they became even more suspicious. Then, one afternoon, while reviewing documents in his makeshift office, he received an anonymous message on his computer. The message was clear: "We know who you are. Stop, or everyone will know." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. Someone knew his true identity. Desperate, he reviewed his strategies. He could no longer wait. He gathered all the evidence and planned the final reveal. The following week, a general meeting was scheduled. It was the perfect opportunity to expose everything. Mark arrived early at the auditorium, disguised as always. As employees gathered, he watched Marion and Edwin enter, seemingly carefree. When everyone was present, Mark took a place in the back and waited for the right moment. The CEO, Andrew, disguised as Mark Andrewson, took the stage and began to speak. "Today, I'd like to share something personal. Over the last month, I've been disguised as one of you, as Mark Andrewson." He paused, observing the shocked reactions in the audience. "I did this to better understand our company's culture and discover where we need to improve." The murmurs increased as he began detailing the humiliations and prejudices he faced, as well as the alarming discoveries. But what concerned me most was discovering we have traitors among us, selling our technology to competitors. The room fell silent. He presented the collected evidence, displaying emails and recordings. Marion and Edwin were pale, unsure of what to say. This not only betrays the company but betrays each of you who works hard every day, Andrew concluded. Security was called, and Marion, Edwin, and the others involved were escorted out of the room under the incredulous gazes of their colleagues. Andrew knew this was just the first step. He needed to reform the corporate culture to ensure this never happened again. He announced a series of drastic changes, starting with a new code of ethics, intensive diversity and inclusion training, and an open-door policy so everyone felt heard and valued. But above all, he promised transparency and justice. Mark Andreessen's journey was ending, but Andrew and Tech Innovate's transformation was just beginning. The revelation during the general meeting had been a shock for everyone at Tech Innovate. In the following days, the company was in a state of turmoil. News of the espionage scandal and internal betrayal spread quickly both within and outside the company. Newspapers and tech websites were buzzing with the story. But for Andrew, this was just the beginning of an even greater battle. With the traitors removed and under investigation, Andrew knew he had to deal with the internal repercussions. Employees were restless, uncertain about the future, and fearful of new betrayals. It was time to act and restore trust. Andrew began by holding smaller meetings with different departments, listening to their concerns and discussing the necessary changes. In each meeting, he encountered new stories of discontent, discrimination, and injustices. He realized the problems were deeper than he had imagined. In one of these meetings, a young developer, Philip, stood up and with a trembling voice began to share his experience. "I always believed in this company's potential, but in recent months, it's been difficult. The environment has become toxic, and it seemed like no one cared about our well-being." Andrew listened attentively, and when Philip finished, he responded sincerely, "Philip, it's for stories like yours that we're here. I promise this will change." As Andrew worked tirelessly to rebuild the company, he began to notice something strange. Even with the main traitors identified, information leaks continued to happen. Someone was still providing critical data to the competition. Andrew intensified his investigations. He and a small trusted team began closely monitoring the systems, looking for any suspicious activity. Then they discovered a crucial clue, a series of encrypted emails sent from an apparently secure account. Through meticulous analysis, they traced the emails to a mid-level employee, someone no one had suspected before. Georgia, a talented and well-respected engineer, was the culprit. Andrew couldn't believe it. Georgia had always been seen as an example of integrity and professionalism. Before taking action, Andrew decided to confront Georgia directly. He called her to a private meeting, disguising his true intentions. "Georgia, I need to talk to you about an important project," he began, trying to keep his voice steady. Georgia seemed calm, suspecting nothing. When they reached the meeting room, Andrew closed the door and, looking into Georgia's eyes, said, "I know what you've been doing." Georgia paled but tried to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about, Andrew." Andrew laid out the evidence he had gathered on the table, encrypted emails, unauthorized accesses. "Why, Georgia?" Seeing she could no longer deny it, Georgia broke down. "I didn't do it for money, Andrew. They threatened my family. I had no choice." Andrew was silent for a moment, absorbing what he had just heard. The initial anger gave way to understanding. "Why didn't you come to me? We could have helped." Georgia, crying, responded, "I didn't know who to trust. Everything seemed so fragile." Andrew knew he needed to handle this carefully. He decided to involve the police and ensure Georgia's family's safety. The news about the coercion and threats brought a new perspective to the situation. The rival company responsible for the threats was exposed, and legal actions were taken. With the culprits identified and the problems exposed, Andrew focused on rebuilding. He implemented a new security system to protect the company's data, ensured psychological support for the employees, and reinforced the inclusion and ethics policies. Trust began to be restored slowly. Employees who once felt undervalued started seeing real changes. Andrew continued to circulate around the company, now without disguises, listening and adjusting as necessary. The transformation was visible. Tech Innovate not only survived the scandal but emerged stronger with a renewed and more inclusive corporate culture. With those responsible for the information leaks identified and the problems exposed, Tech Innovate began to recover. Andrew, now without disguises, was determined to rebuild the company and restore the trust of employees and the market. The first measure was to implement a new security system to protect the company's data. They hired cybersecurity specialists to ensure that leaks would not happen again. Andrew also reinforced internal transparency, sharing with all employees the measures being taken and the progress made. Beyond security issues, Andrew knew it was essential to care for employees' well-being. He introduced psychological support programs, including counseling sessions and mental health workshops. The company started offering a more welcoming environment where employees could express their concerns without fear of retaliation. As these changes were implemented, Andrew continued to circulate around the company, now as the real CEO. He made a point of getting to know each department, hearing directly from employees their ideas and concerns. In one of these visits, he met Philip again. "Philip, how are things now?" Andrew asked with a sincere smile. Philip, visibly more confident, replied, "Improving, Andrew. I feel we're being heard now." "Thank you for that." Andrew nodded. "You and everyone here deserve it. Together, we're going to make this company something we can all be proud of." The changes began to bear fruit quickly. The work environment became more collaborative and inclusive. Employees who once felt marginalized now saw opportunities for growth and recognition. Although Marion and Edwin were removed from the company, they were still a concern. Andrew decided it was important to understand why they made those decisions. He organized a meeting with them in the presence of their lawyers to discuss the motivations behind their actions. "Marion, Edwin, I'm not here to judge but to understand," Andrew began. "Why did you betray the company? What drove you to this?" Marion, initially defensive, finally spoke. "Andrew, we felt the company didn't value our work. We thought we'd never be recognized no matter how hard we tried." Edwin added, "It was a combination of frustration and external opportunities. We knew it was wrong, but we were desperate for change." Andrew listened carefully, and although their actions were unjustifiable, he understood that the company's culture needed a profound change. He promised himself that no employee would feel undervalued again. In the following months, Tech Innovate underwent a remarkable transformation. Employee satisfaction rates increased, and productivity rose along with them. The market responded positively to the changes. Investor confidence was restored. Andrew also established an advisory council composed of representatives from different departments and hierarchical levels. This council was to bring concerns and suggestions directly to the CEO and the board, ensuring that everyone had a voice in the company's decisions. One of the members of this council was Philip, whose dedication and talent had been recognized. He became an example of how the company was committed to valuing its internal talents. At a council meeting, Philip raised an important issue. "Andrew, I think we should invest more in mentoring programs. Many of us, especially the newer ones, would benefit greatly from that." Andrew immediately agreed. "Excellent idea, Philip. We'll implement that as soon as possible." Over time, Tech Innovate became a benchmark in corporate culture. Other companies began to follow its example, implementing inclusion, transparency, and employee well-being policies. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Andrew felt fulfilled. He knew there was still much work to be done, but he was confident they were on the right track. He learned that a company is not just about technology or profit but about the people who build it every day. As he walked through the company's hallways, greeting employees and seeing sincere smiles, Andrew felt deep satisfaction. Tech Innovate had not only survived the scandal but emerged stronger and more united. He knew that together they could achieve anything. Months had passed since the shocking revelation and subsequent transformation at Tech Innovate. The company, once marked by scandals and betrayals, was now a model of inclusive and transparent corporate culture. Andrew, whose leadership and vision had guided the company through turbulent times, finally felt at peace. The implemented changes began to bear tangible fruits. Productivity had increased, and employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. Committed to transparency, Andrew decided to hold a large meeting to share the progress and thank everyone for their effort and dedication. In the packed auditorium, he took the stage, observing the familiar and new faces that made up the Tech Innovate team. "I want to thank each and every one of you," he began with a genuine smile. "Without your commitment, resilience, and courage, we wouldn't have made it." Applause echoed through the auditorium, and Andrew continued, "We are on a path of growth and innovation, but more importantly, we are building a culture of respect and inclusion. Every voice here matters, and each of you has contributed to this change." After the meeting, Andrew spoke with several employees, listening to their stories and their ideas for the future. He met Philip, now a respected member of the advisory council, who told him about a new mentoring project he was leading. "We're connecting new employees with experienced mentors," Philip explained. "It's making a huge difference in their integration and development." Andrew smiled. "I'm very proud of you, Philip. You are an example of what we can achieve together." As he walked through the company's hallways, Andrew met Georgia, who was now in a prominent position on the cybersecurity team. The threat to her family had been resolved, and she was determined to contribute to the company's protection. "Andrew, thank you for believing in me," she said with evident gratitude. "You are a valuable part of this team." "Georgia," Andrew replied, "I'm glad you're here." With new security and inclusion policies in place, Tech Innovate continued to grow and thrive. The company not only regained its market position but also earned a reputation as one of the best places to work. Talents from diverse backgrounds began seeking opportunities at Tech Innovate, attracted by its supportive and respectful culture. Andrew also reflected on his own growth during this process. The experience of disguising himself as a low-level employee gave him a new perspective on the challenges and prejudices many faced daily. He promised to continue being an accessible and empathetic leader, always willing to listen and learn. Tech Innovate's transformation also inspired other companies to follow its example. Andrew was invited to speak at conferences and events, sharing the company's journey and the lessons learned. He became an advocate for transparency, inclusion, and employee well-being throughout the industry. One day, while reviewing reports in his office, Andrew received an unexpected call. It was one of the company's major investors, praising the changes and expressing confidence in Tech Innovate's future. "Andrew, I'm impressed with what you and your team have achieved. We will continue to support and invest in the company. I look forward to seeing what comes next." Andrew smiled, feeling renewed and motivated. "Thank you. With everyone's support, Tech Innovate's future is bright." At home that night, Andrew reflected on the past months. The journey had been full of challenges and difficult moments, but also of achievements and growth. He knew that the fight for a fair and inclusive corporate culture never ended, but he was confident that with the right team, they could face any challenge. Tech Innovate was stronger than ever, not just because of its innovative technology but because of the people who made it up every day.